Friday the 13th, the slasher movie that developed into one of the most well-loved franchises in the slasher genre. Today is Friday the 13th, and we're going to talk about the very first Friday the 13th on VHS. And just to be clear, this is the 1994 print, not the earlier 80s edition. Still has a great cover though, doesn't it? We love how the spine looks. Not in love with the label on the tape itself, because that's how all these Paramount tapes are. When I see this, I think of planes, trains, and automobiles, to be honest. Doesn't give Friday the 13th. Now, it's not too bad down there, I guess, but... Welcome back to the Ectoviolence channel. My name is Alec, and today we are talking Friday the 13th on VHS on Friday the 13th. This tape art in general, the poster for Friday the 13th is very iconic. I actually have a poster of it hanging in my living room. I've actually got the Camp Crystal Lake sign hanging up in here too. Let's go ahead and throw this tape in. So this tape has a rough start to it. Look at all this static. Now the Friday the 13th movies for me were never my favorite. I grew up mostly watching the Nightmare on Elm Street movies or the Scream movies. I was always very aware of Jason, and I did see Freddy vs. Jason in theaters. The first Friday the 13th movie I saw was Part 8, which to some people is absolutely insane, but I still love Part 8 to this day. And it's an interesting thing, there's no trailers on this. Surprisingly, that happens more often than you'd think on some of these old VHS tapes. This is a very well-loved copy, and by that I mean the tape itself is pretty beat up. The box is in pretty good condition though. So Sean Cunningham was the director of this movie. He was kind of behind getting it made. Victor Miller was the scriptwriter. Sean Cunningham famously took out an ad in Variety advertising Friday the 13th long before the script was even completed. So let's start off talking about the positives. So the soundtrack and the score for this movie is something that sticks out to me. The score itself is very reminiscent of stuff like Psycho and Jaws. Music by Harry Manfredini, of course. Can't have a Friday the 13th review without also having a black cat to, cancel out. I'm gonna scratch the kitty too, look at him. Oh, he's adorable. I'm gonna cuddle him for this whole review. So this is where you also kind of get the, you get the iconic sounds, you know what I mean? The audio that everybody imitates, that it's actually saying killer mommy, ki ma, I don't know. It's that whole thing, we all know. Let's talk about the cast, which is, for a slasher movie, it's pretty decent. They do a good enough job. There's never moments where you're like, oh, these people are horrible. I mean, the one girl at the beginning that plays Anne, kind of, a little bit. But Betsy Palmer, Adrienne King, they did great jobs, and obviously Kevin Bacon, come on, it's the Baconator, what are you going to do? And for a slasher movie of its time and budget, some of the kills are fun, some of them are, it lacks a little bit, But that's kind of how these movies were going because of ratings and things. Speaking again on the actors, Betsy Palmer as Pamela Voorhees, honestly, it's iconic. It's a shame that she's only in really the end of the movie. I read that she was paid $1,000 a day for 10 days on set. I can't imagine making $10,000 in 10 days now. So the camp setting is obviously, at least now, a very popular setting for slashers, slasher parodies. But the year before this came out, you were having stuff like Meatballs come out. Lastly, on the positive list, I am going to say that this did grow into one of the most iconic franchises. So regardless of how good this movie is or isn't, without this movie, we wouldn't have Part 3. We wouldn't have Part 4. And for me, we wouldn't have Part 8 and Freddy vs. Jason. You take away those movies, it's a total loss. Now let's briefly talk about the negatives. Biggest one any horror fan or any other normal person will tell you is that there's no Jason in this movie, or at least that there's a big lack of Jason in it. His appearance at the end of this movie is great. I do love it. Apparently that was Tom Savini's idea, and Victor Miller, the writer, was not thrilled with it. It does have some cheesy moments, but then again, any old low-budget slasher is going to have some cheesy moments, for sure. It has some slow moments, some boring moments, maybe a little too much time with some of these characters, but again, some of these older slashers definitely had to do that. And the last negative, and what I think is the biggest negative for me, is the fact that they killed the snake during the making of this movie. That is absolutely crazy to me. It's, stuff like that is the reason why I will never watch Cannibal Holocaust. Fuck that movie. Fuck the people that did this on this movie. That being said, I can definitely still appreciate this movie a little bit, but at the same time, I don't really have much desire to watch the first one again after, really knowing about the details of the snake killing. Am I going to really give the people who made this movie shit after 44 years of this movie existing? Not really at this point. It's a moot point. It happened almost fucking 50 years ago. And it's not even close to my favorite in the franchise, so... And I did find this interesting. At the end of this tape, it started getting bad again. This tape was already in not great condition. I'm sure you've noticed in the clips, because they're all from the scan that I did today. While I've got you here, be sure to check out links to my TeePublic in the description below. I've got some new and cool and interesting shirt designs on there. And before I rate this movie, why don't you go ahead and jump in the comments down below. Let me know what you think of the first Friday the 13th movie. And let me know what your favorite Friday the 13th movie is. Friday the 13th is going to be a short 2.5 out of 5 hearts for me. It's not even close to being my favorite Friday the 13th movie, and the Friday the 13th franchise is not even close to being my favorite horror franchise, let alone slasher. But again, I think the main legacy from this movie is that it spawned the franchise, and the franchise is much better overall than just this first one. If you like this video, be sure to check out this one and hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.